Respectfully, Brittney Griner was in a Russian prison. You would think that somebody who is now free, back in America on home soil, would not have too much to...
Right after Stephen A., Smith absolutely torched Brittney Griner for throwing racial jabs at Caitlin Clark, the same Clark who survived that scary Russian prison ordeal. Things got wild fast. Griner tried to play the race card over crowd noise, but Stephen A. wasn't having it. He hit her with a truth bomb she clearly forgot about, and it wrecked her. The comeback was so savage, Griner completely lost it on live TV. Here's the real question. What stung Griner more? Getting called out for her racial comments, or getting reminded of the Russian prison rescue in front of everyone? Either way, it was pure chaos to watch. The meltdown that followed was so wild, it honestly deserves its own highlight reel. Stephen A. didn't hold back. He gave her a reality check so sharp, it sent Griner into a full spiral. If you're enjoying this, drop a like and hit subscribe. Believe it or not, over 90% of you watching still haven't subscribed. It's free.
She says, right there, watch this. Every time we play her, there's this commotion, like this loud rumbling from the stands. Turns out it's people, thousands of them, just sitting there watching on purpose. It's very disruptive. She says WNBA games used to be a chill, quiet place. You could bring your laptop and relax, maybe even get a little work done. But now it's like there's large gatherings of people watching us from the stands. Some of them are yelling crazy shit about what they're seeing, putting unfair pressure on us to score, like we're there for their entertainment. You are. The whole thing is toxic. I saw a guy with his daughter in the crowd, both of them yelling, couldn't hear what they were saying exactly, but it was either my performance or some light racism.
During a recent sit-down, Griner started complaining about all the extra noise and energy Caitlin Clark has brought into WNBA arenas. She talked about spotting a father and daughter cheering courtside, and somehow decided their excitement had to be either about her game or just plain racism. That's the phrase Griner reached for, to describe fans simply enjoying a basketball game. Just stop and think about that for a second. A professional athlete sees people cheering at a sporting event, and her first instinct is to assume it's racially motivated? That's not just...
Respectfully, Brittney Griner was in a Russian prison. You would think that somebody who is now free, back in America on home soil, would not have too much to complain about. Especially something like this. Fans in every sport. She described the fan.
Right off the bat, Griner's own supporters couldn't step in to save her this time. Stephen A.'s comparison hit way too close to home, way too accurate, and honestly, way too fair to argue with. Rather than pausing to admit he had a point, or showing even a hint of gratitude for how her situation turned out, Griner went the other way completely. She dug in even harder. She came straight for Stephen A., personally, claiming he couldn't possibly understand what she'd lived through. She wrote off his entire take.
Clearly she's not remembering who they let out to get her back.
The Merchant of Death.
The Merchant of Death. An arms dealer that wanted to kill American citizens, according to the reports. That's who they let out. For her.
Nobody expected the biggest disruption on the court to come from someone who wasn't even holding a ball. Here's the wild part. Griner complained that crowd noise was throwing off her game. But look at what actually happened next. Her own comments, and the meltdown that followed, caused way more noise and way more distraction than any crowd in history ever could. She turned into exactly the thing she was complaining about, a walking distraction that pulled attention away from the actual basketball being played. And Stephen A. wasn't just talking about the prison rescue. Sure, that was the most brutal punch he threw, but he went deeper than that. He broke down how Griner's complaints exposed a total misunderstanding of what pro sports entertainment is even supposed to be. Fans don't hand over their money to sit there quiet and clap politely. They pay to scream, to feel something, to create an atmosphere. So the fact that Griner found excited fans disruptive tells you everything about how out of touch she'd become with the reality of pro athletics. Think about every other sport out there. Players thrive on crowd energy. They use it as fuel. But Griner was treating fan excitement like a burden instead of a golden opportunity to shine on a bigger stage than she'd ever had before. This whole meltdown also exposed something bigger, just how unprepared a lot of WNBA players were for real, mainstream attention. For 25 years, they'd operated inside a bubble. Low expectations, minimal criticism, almost zero accountability. Then suddenly the spotlight got real, and not everyone was ready for it. Now here's where it gets even messier. The racial angle in Griner's original comments was a serious problem, because it assumed the worst possible motive from fans who were simply hyped about a basketball game. Picture this, a father and daughter cheering in the stands, and somehow that gets labeled as racism. That's not just a leap. That's a worldview built around hunting for problems instead of appreciating the moment. Caitlin Clark's arrival brought real pressure, real scrutiny, real consequences tied to actual performance. And clearly, some players just weren't built for that kind of adjustment. Tossing around loaded phrases like this to describe crowd noise is exactly the kind of reckless talk Stephen A. has spent his entire career pushing back against. He made a point of saying how dangerous it is when public figures throw around racism accusations with zero evidence, zero context, because it waters down real conversations about real racial issues and manufactures division where there didn't need to be any. For someone who's rarely ever faced real consequences for their words, Stephen A.'s response was exactly what you'd expect from him. And the timing, brutal. This meltdown landed right when the WNBA was riding a wave of growth it had never seen before. More popularity, more revenue, more eyeballs, largely because of Caitlin Clark. Instead of embracing that moment, Griner was out here complaining about the very thing putting more money in her pocket than she's ever made in her career. That prison rescue comparison Stephen A. brought up, it landed so hard because of the contrast. On one side, an experience behind bars in a foreign country. On the other side, complaints about the noise level at an American basketball game. The gap between those two realities is enormous, and Griner's inability to show real gratitude for her freedom and her return to the sport revealed a level of entitlement that honestly stunned people. The U.S. government went to the table and negotiated with terrorists to bring her home. And her response to that chapter of her life was to complain about crowd volume. That's how disconnected things had gotten. The meltdown also showed just how thin the skin really was underneath it all. When Stephen A. pushed back with facts, not insults, just cold, rational counterpoints about her own circumstances, Griner didn't respond with reflection. She responded with anger and defensiveness. And here's the thing that made it worse for her. Nobody else in professional sports complains about crowd noise the way she did. Not one. Which made her comments stick out even more as completely out of touch. What really sealed it for Griner was that Stephen A. wasn't a lone voice here. Other commentators, former players, even some current WNBA players started questioning her approach and her words. The meltdown that followed proved she simply wasn't ready to handle real pushback against her own victim narrative. Stephen A. pointed out something simple but powerful. Athletes across the NBA, NFL, MLB, and NHL deal with hostile road crowds and loud, aggressive fans constantly. It's part of the job. Griner trying to inject race into a conversation about crowd energy only pulled focus away from what should have been a celebration. The WNBA's growth, its rising popularity, its increasing revenue. Instead of embracing that, she went searching for problems that weren't there. What made Stephen A.'s response so effective is that he never backed down and never apologized for calling it like he saw it. He doubled down on his analysis and gave even more context for why her complaints came across as so tone-deaf. Instead of hiding behind a victim narrative, she was forced to actually sit with the weaknesses in her own argument. And notice something telling. Most players and coaches around the league stayed quiet. They didn't rush to defend her. That silence spoke volumes. It showed that even her peers understood she'd gone way too far this time. The lack of backup on her racial accusation made it clear that almost nobody in her own circle was willing to stand behind that claim. This entire meltdown drew a sharp line between real criticism and manufactured outrage. Stephen A's commentary stuck to actual issues, actual patterns, actual facts. And the timing couldn't have been worse for Griner, landing right as the WNBA desperately needed positive, mainstream momentum. While she was busy creating controversy out of nothing, the difference between calm, factual analysis and pure emotional reaction was obvious to every single person watching. Her complaints about fan energy, wrapped up in careless racism claims, are exactly the kind of toxicity that risks pushing away the casual fans the league is trying so hard to attract. There's a bigger conversation buried in here too, about athlete accountability in the social media age. None of this happened behind closed doors. It all played out in public, and she clearly wasn't ready for the fallout, which her very public meltdown made painfully obvious. Stephen A kept circling back to the prison rescue for a reason. It gave people something concrete, something real to compare her domestic complaints against. The massive gap between international diplomacy fighting to bring her home, and her turning around to criticize the very country that made that possible. Her reaction to fans wasn't just striking. It was almost impossible to defend. And this whole situation is proof of something else too. Social media doesn't let controversies fade the way they used to. Old-school disputes might have cooled off in a day or two. But every defensive post, every emotional reply she posted after Stephen A's criticism, just kept the story alive and made her look worse with every single comment. The most damaging part of this entire meltdown wasn't the initial comment. It was everything that came after. Instead of showing maturity, growth, or perspective, she leaned harder into the victim narrative and started targeting anyone who dared disagree with her. Meanwhile, Stephen has stuck to facts and stayed away from personal attacks the entire time, letting her own words and reactions do the damage on their own. Zoom out for a second, and this fight isn't really about one player's comments. It's about a bigger clash between athletes comfortable with low-stakes, low-pressure environments, and a league that's finally chasing real, widespread recognition. This meltdown exposed how unready some players still are for the kind of scrutiny that comes with real cultural relevance. Compare that to how Caitlin Clark has handled pressure and criticism throughout her rise. Calm, professional, focused. Griner's response did the complete opposite. Defensive, emotional, and ultimately, ineffective. Here's the most embarrassing part of all. If she had just ignored Stephen A's original comments, or responded like a professional, this story dies in a day. Instead, her own reaction turned it into a multi-day news cycle that kept growing louder and louder, and that Russian prison rescue comparison is going to follow her for a long, long time. And honestly, the most satisfying part of this whole saga was watching someone finally hold her accountable, not just for one comment, but for a pattern of behavior built on a total lack of gratitude and perspective. Stephen A made sure that connection stuck permanently in the public conversation, and her meltdown only reinforced his exact point. She never took ownership of the tone-deaf comment. She never stepped back. Every time she tried to play the victim, Stephen A refused to let her hide behind vague racial grievances or emotional deflection. She was forced, again and again, to face the actual holes in her own argument. In the end, this breakdown proved every single point Stephen A made. It revealed someone who complains about success instead of embracing the opportunity sitting right in front of her. And because of that, Griner may end up remembered more for this meltdown than for anything she's actually accomplished on the court. Whatever positive impact she could have had on the sport got buried under this, under a reputation now built around causing controversy instead of solving it. She learned the hard way what happens when you try to play victim against someone who simply won't let the facts slide. It backfired completely, and the meltdown that followed became the story everyone remembers. So here's the real question for you. Was Stephen A right to bring up that prison rescue? Or did he go too far? Drop your take in the comments right now. Hit that like button if you think accountability